In 1831, the limit on how much grain a farm can grow is not the land, and it is not the plough, it is the harvest. Wheat ripens in a window of roughly 10 days. Cut it early, and the grain is immature. Cut it late, and it shatters in the field, and falls to the ground, and is lost. Inside that window, every stalk on the farm has to be cut, and it is cut by men swinging a cradle scythe. A good man with a cradle cuts 2 to 3 acres in a day. That figure determines everything. A farmer plants only what he can be certain of cutting in 10 days with the hands he can hire. Land is abundant in the United States in 1831, and labor is not. So millions of acres of the most productive soil on the continent are never planted, because there is no way to bring the crop in. In July of 1831, on a farm called Walnut Grove in Rockbridge County, Virginia, a 22-year-old demonstrates a machine at a field near Steele's Tavern. It is pulled by a horse. It has a straight reciprocating knife, fingers to hold the stalks, a reel to sweep them into the blade, and a platform to lay the cut grain on. It cuts about 6 acres in an afternoon. That machine, and the company built around it, becomes the largest agricultural manufacturer in the world. 71 years later, it is merged into the International Harvester Company, which controls 90% of grain binder production and 80% of mower production in the United States. 2 years after its inventor dies, the factory that builds it produces the deadliest labor confrontation in American history, and 4 men are hanged in Chicago for a bomb nobody could prove they threw. Cyrus McCormick is born on the 15th of February, 1809, at Walnut Grove, Rockbridge County, Virginia. His father, Robert McCormick, is a farmer, a mill owner, and an inventor who spends 28 years attempting to build a working mechanical reaper and does not succeed. The son takes the same problem and solves it inside a few seasons. The essential difference is the arrangement of the cutting mechanism. Robert McCormick's designs try to imitate the sweeping action of a scythe. Cyrus abandons the imitation and uses a reciprocating knife running through slotted fingers with a reel to feed the stalks into it. The principle is still in use on every combine harvester operating today. Obed Hussey, a Maine-born inventor working in Ohio, patents a reaper in December of 1833. McCormick patents his on the 21st of June, 1834. Hussey is first to the patent office. McCormick is first to the market, and the market is what decides it. It does not decide quickly. For most of the 1830s, McCormick sells almost nothing. He is occupied with the family iron furnace, which fails in the financial panic of 1837 and leaves the McCormicks in debt. He does not sell a reaper to anyone outside his own county until 1840. The machine that works in Virginia is also, in Virginia, close to pointless. The Shenandoah Valley is hilly and its fields are small. The reaper's advantage scales with flatness and acreage, and the flat, enormous acreage is 1,000 miles west. In 1847, at the age of 38, McCormick moves to Chicago. Chicago in 1847 is a swampy lakeside town of about 16,000 people. It is also positioned exactly where the prairie grain will have to pass on its way east. McCormick builds a factory on the north bank of the Chicago River in partnership with the city's first mayor, William Ogden, who puts up $50,000 of his own money. The following year, McCormick's original patent expires. He applies for an extension and is refused. The invention becomes public property in 1848, and dozens of manufacturers begin building reapers. McCormick spends much of the rest of his life in patent litigation and loses a substantial part of it. What he does instead is invent the way American machinery is sold. He offers a written performance warranty with a money-back guarantee, 15 acres a day, or the customer's money is returned. He sets fixed prices and does not negotiate them. At a time when every price in America is haggled, he sells on credit, structured to the agricultural year, so that a farmer pays a deposit in the spring, uses the machine to bring in the harvest, and settles the balance by December out of the proceeds. He guarantees the supply of interchangeable replacement parts. He stages public field trials against competing machines and advertises the results. He builds a network of trained agents who can demonstrate, repair, and finance. Almost none of this exists in American commerce before he does it. By the mid-1850s, McCormick is selling more than 4,000 reapers a year. By 1860, he has sold approximately 80,000 machines. In 1851, at the Great Exhibition in the Crystal Palace in London, the McCormick Reaper wins the Council Medal. British agricultural opinion had described it in advance as a cross between a wheelbarrow and a flying machine. After a public field trial in Hampshire, it is described differently, and McCormick uses the moment to begin building an overseas sales network. Then the American Civil War arrives, and the Reaper does something that changes the outcome of it. The Union puts something over 2 million men into uniform, and most of them come off farms. The farms do not stop producing. Northern wheat output rises during the war, because the labor removed from the fields is replaced by machinery, and the mechanical reaper is the machine that does it. Northern grain feeds the Union armies and is exported to Britain in quantities significant enough to weigh on British calculations about intervening on the Confederate side. Edwin Stanton, Lincoln's Secretary of War, is later quoted to the effect that the reaper is a factor in the outcome of the war. Whether or not the quotation is exact, the underlying arithmetic is not in dispute. A machine that lets one man cut 15 acres a day is what allows a country to send its farmers to war and keep eating. On the 8th and 9th of October, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire burns approximately 3.5 square miles of the city. The McCormick Works on the north bank of the river is destroyed. McCormick is 62 years old and considers not rebuilding. His wife, Nettie Fowler McCormick, argues for rebuilding. The works is reconstructed on a new site and is back in production by 1873, larger than before. Cyrus Hall McCormick dies in Chicago on the 13th of May, 1884, at the age of 75. His son, Cyrus Hall McCormick Jr., takes over the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company. He is 25 years old. Under his management, the works becomes drastically more mechanized. Annual production rises from 21,555 machines to 54,841. The factory employs roughly 1,400 people. In 1885, the iron molders at the works strike, and they win. McCormick Jr. is forced to restore a 15% wage cut. From that point, he is committed to breaking the union. His method is machinery. The company installs pneumatic molding machines designed to replace the skilled iron molders who had led the 1885 walkout. The machines produce castings of poor quality, but that is not their function. Their function is to make the molders replaceable. In February of 1886, McCormick Jr. locks out the workforce and brings in non-union labor under the protection of approximately 300 armed Pinkerton agents. This happens in the same months as the national campaign for the 8-hour working day, which is building toward a general strike set for the 1st of May, 1886. Chicago is the center of that campaign, and the McCormick Works is the center of Chicago's dispute. On the 3rd of May, 1886, strikers and locked-out workers confront strikebreakers, leaving the McCormick plant at the end of the shift. Police fire into the crowd. At least 2 workers are killed, and contemporary accounts put the figure as high as 6. Labor organizers call a protest meeting for the following evening at Haymarket Square. On the evening of the 4th of May, 1886, the Haymarket meeting is orderly and thinly attended, and it is breaking up in the rain when a police column advances to disperse what remains of it. Someone throws a bomb into the police ranks. The identity of the bomber has never been established. The police open fire, and there is firing from the crowd. 7 police officers die, most of them from gunfire rather than the bomb. At least 1 civilian is killed, and an unknown number of civilians die, whose deaths are never recorded, because the wounded do not go to hospitals where the police can find them. 8 anarchists and labor organizers are tried. The prosecution does not claim that any of them threw the bomb. The case is that their published advocacy made them responsible for it. All 8 are convicted. 4 are hanged on the 11th of November, 1887. 1 dies in his cell before the execution. 3 are imprisoned and are pardoned in 1893 by Governor John Peter Altgeld, who states publicly that the trial was unjust and destroys his own political career by saying so. The Haymarket affair becomes the founding event of International Workers' Day, observed on the 1st of May in most of the world. It begins outside the gate of a reaper factory in Chicago, over the replacement of skilled molders by pneumatic machines, in a company built on the invention of a Virginia farmer's son who had been dead for 2 years. The company continues. On the 12th of August, 1902, the McCormick Harvesting Machine Company merges with Deering Harvester and 3 smaller firms, financed by J.P. Morgan, to form the International Harvester Company. The new corporation controls 90% of grain binder production and 80% of mower production in the United States. Cyrus McCormick Jr. becomes its first president. International Harvester goes on to build the Farmall, the tractor that mechanizes American row crop agriculture, from 1924. It becomes for decades the largest agricultural machinery manufacturer in the world, and it also builds trucks, construction equipment, and the Scout. On the 2nd of November 1979, the United Auto Workers walk out of International Harvester for 6 months. The company loses $600 million in the strike. The farm depression of the early 1980s finishes what the strike begins. On the 26th of November 1984, International Harvester announces the sale of its agricultural equipment division to Tenneco, which already owns J.V. Case. The businesses are combined as Case IH. The remaining company is renamed Navistar International. Case IH is today part of CNH Industrial, which reports consolidated revenues of $19.84 billion for full year 2024, employs roughly 40,000 people, and sells in approximately 170 countries. The machine that started it is a reciprocating knife running through slotted fingers with a reel above it. That mechanism is on the header of every combine harvester in every wheat field on Earth, cutting a swath 30 or 40 feet wide instead of 6, at 15 kilometers an hour instead of walking pace. The problem it solved was the 10-day window. A man with a cradle scythe cut 2 to 3 acres a day in 1831. A modern combine cut several hundred. Cyrus McCormick did not invent the reaper. Obed Hussey patented one first, and his own father spent 28 years on the problem before him. What McCormick did was build the machine that worked, take it to the flat land where it mattered, and then invent the warranty, the fixed price, the installment plan, the parts supply and the dealer network that made it possible for a farmer with no capital to own one. He mechanized the harvest, and he invented modern selling, and both of those things are still in use. And in May of 1886, outside the factory he built, the 2 things he could not mechanize, the men and their willingness to be replaced, produced a bomb, 7 dead policemen, 4 hangings, and a public holiday observed by most of the world.